Okay, so I'm right back with this example layout that we had. And again, this sort of was preset by when I was working on it earlier. But let's look at page setup. So to get into page setup dialog, we need to type page setup. It's going to open up our page setup manager. So let's talk about this briefly and what it's showing us. So right now, current layout, layout 1, that's just the default name that this initial layout tab has. We can always change this. And then it also gives us a few initial setup details that we have in here. Device name, this has to do with printing, DWG to PDF. I'm going to talk through why I think that is the way to do it. This is sort of representing the name of that plotter. Plot size is showing us the sheet size that we currently have. This white rectangle is 24 inches by 42 inches, which isn't necessarily a standard sheet size. We needed to use this on this project, both because of the overall size of the project boundary, as well as we left space for binder clips, which is something that many people do. You'll bind all of your sheets together, so you need to leave ample space on the left-hand side. Let's go into modify and talk through all the options that are in here. So this is a very important dialog that comes up. And we're just going to kind of go through this counterclockwise and talk about specifics. So first thing, printer plotter. So this PC3, that is the link to the system printers that you have. If I click this drop down, it shows some old printer drivers that I have, some standards that come with Windows, some standard ones that come with AutoCAD as well, like this AutoCAD PDF. Your office is probably going to have some preferences on this, or for example, if you use something like Bluebeam, they have their own driver that gets installed. My suggestion, and this has worked for me the entire time I've been doing this, is I always select DWG to PDF. This is an internal print driver that AutoCAD provides, and the reason for using this is everybody who has CAD has this driver. So we're going to cover a bit in section 10 on packaging your drawing set to send out to other offices or to clients. And when we do that, essentially what you want is their ability to open up your drawings and print immediately without having to worry about any of these page setup options. Having a print driver that's standard for all AutoCAD users makes it easy for anybody else who's touching this DWG to print directly from the file. If they don't have that driver, they need to reset it. Sometimes there's font issues or the model view window will move around, but DWG to PDF is a good bet that everybody's going to be able to access that driver. So we're going to keep that at DWG to PDF. PDF options, we're just leave this as is. We don't need to worry about that. Paper size. So this is a custom paper size. We will set up a new custom paper size when we go to set up our sheet files. But let's just look at this real quick. So what this is, there's a lot of options in here. ANSI and Arch are different ways of setting up drawing files in different standard sheet sizes. So if I scroll down, there's also ISO. This has to do with setting sheet sizes at millimeters. Some of these are just conversions from inches. Really what we are going to focus on and what you would focus on most of the time are sort of the standard sheet sizes. So the way to think about sheet sizes is basically these letters double as you get further down the alphabet. So in the ANSI group, your smallest sheet size is going to be 8.5 by 11. It's a standard paper size that you would, for example, print out a written report on. But then you double one of the sizes, then you get to 11 by 17. That's also called a tabloid size. And then you just keep doubling one of the sizes to get larger. 17 by 22, 22 by 34. That's usually probably the biggest you're going to go. You do have a 34 by 44. That's a pretty big sheet. But that's the ANSI group. And then the Arch group is slightly different. So usually the smallest sheet size you'll see with the Arch is the Arch C. That's going to be your 18 by 24. But you can't go smaller than that. Like the arches start with 9 by 12. I would say most of the time what you're going to be using are going to be either the ANSI or the arches starting from the C's. Now, if you just have a sketch, which a lot of times or a presentation, you'll do those on tabloid size. That's a nice printed, like physically printed size to bring to a client meeting. But as far as a finalized construction sheet set, probably you're at the smallest size, you're going to do 22 or 17 by 22 or 18 by 24. Most of the time when you see a full construction set that you're going to bring to site and talk through with the contractors, you're going to be up in the, for the ANSI, you'll be in the 22 by 34 or the arch 24 by 36 size. Anything bigger than that is really very large. I mean, this is 3 feet by 4 feet, the 36 by 48, but sometimes you print those. This project, like I said, we're going to be using this custom paper size that I set, and we'll go through that when we start setting up our sheets together, but I'm going to leave that on 24 by 42. Your plot area, I always set up plot area. Yours probably defaults to layout. That's usually the standard default. We will be putting ours on window. Now what window does, if I leave this on window and then you actually hit this button, is it wants me to define the window. So if I define it over here, I hit OK, hit close. It's moved our sheet over to where I define that window. If I go back into page setup, modify. What I usually do is set up, and we'll do this together when we're setting up our sheets. I usually establish an exterior perimeter based off of the sheet size, and then I do window, hit window, and then I snap. So that's actually what this outside non-plot rectangle is. So if I click to these and then make sure it's at center of the plot, you can always hit preview. That'll show you where you're laying out. It'll even show you part of your drawing. Just hit escape to get out of that. But this is why I always set up so it's centered on that rectangle, and I'm not worried about my borders just being off because my layout wasn't set up correctly, or layout meaning this layout. So I stick with window. Extents you can do, but I find window is just sort of the easiest to replicate from sheet to sheet, which ultimately we're going to be copying model views from sheet to sheet to make sure that the location of the drawing itself is the exact same on each sheet. Over here, plot scale, we want to leave this as the default 1 inch equals 1 foot. We are not going to be changing any of these. We want to leave these as is because we're going to set our scale down here. So plot scale, make sure this is unchecked, fit to paper, and just leave these as is. Leave scale line weights off as well. Down here, this is where you set your drawing orientation. So landscape, that's what we're going to be working in. So that means the 42 is on the x-axis and the short side is the y-axis. If we did portrait, it would flip those. We don't need to change anything on the paper size. Normally, you'll just be flipping through landscape and portrait. I would say 9 times out of 10, I'm using landscape for the landscape drawings. It just happens to be how a lot of drawings end up getting set up, but you can always do portrait. Up here in plot options, these are my preferred settings that I have, and I think these are the default as well. Plot object line weights, that has to do with our pen style or plot style that we're going to talk about up here. We want that on. That's our colors based on our layers that have the individual color index color settings. So we want this checked. Plot transparency, I keep this one unchecked because I've noticed times I have put transparency rather than using a grayscale line color. It tends to make the plotting go slowly and more errors occur, particularly if you have a transparency on a hatch. That can cause a lot of problems. So instead of doing plot transparency, I will just change the color of the actual layer and then use layer management to make it look like it's either transparent, or if I really need to show something that's transparent, I will fix it in Photoshop. But really what we want when we go to print is little to no color on our sheets, and we use grayscale line colors instead of transparencies. Plot with plot styles, again, that has to do with this plot style table up here, so we want that checked. Hide paper space objects, just go ahead and leave that unchecked. We're going to want anything that we see on our sheet other than items on our non-plot layers to be printed when we go to plot. One more up, shaded viewport options, just leave this as is. This is sort of a standard setting. And then up here, we're going to talk about plot style table. I'm just going to hit OK. So if we just go back, we've got our model view window, we've got our plan right here. I'm going to go ahead and go down to my non-plot layer. Again, all this means is when we go to plot, anything on this layer will not be on the printed sheet. All I'm doing for this is I'm just setting a quick rectangle. Don't worry about yours for this example. We're just going to set, you can set anything. Try to kind of match what I've got currently here, but if you're on a 24 by 36 type of sheet, that'd be a good one to sort of use as an example. That's fine. So I'm just going to delete our model view. So our model view disappeared. And this is as if we were starting from scratch. So the command for model view is either MVIEW or MV. I always like to make sure that I have a layer. Mine's called Z-MView because I usually also put this on a non-plot layer. That way that there's not a border where I don't want it to be. So I'm going to click on Z-MView. You can make that if you want. And within here, make sure that you have this printer marked as a no. So you would just click this until you've got the red symbol on top of it. So I'm typing MV for model view. I'm going to go ahead and snap. And again, don't worry if you don't have this same layout that I have, but I'm going to go ahead and match what we did have. So what that's going to do is it's going to show us a full view of our drawing. Interestingly enough, it's already oriented the way that we'll ultimately want it. Now, if I click in here, you can see that our UCS is not in the corner of the house. We're going to set that together. Let's go ahead. I'm going to zoom in. Again, I've clicked into model space. You can also type MS. We're still in model space, even though we're within the layout. Typing UCS, snapping. Okay, so that's flat. Because we don't see any of the Z axis on there, we know that this is flattened out. And again, just like if we're in model space, because technically we are, I can do plan, enter, enter. Now it's showing our full orientation the way that we want it. Now just kind of pan over and sort of center your drawing where it currently is. I'm going to go ahead and close our properties. So that's all we need to do for model view. Again, I like to have it on its own layer. And I would say start with rectangle. Let's talk about scale. Ultimately, this is what we're working towards, is getting our sheet set up with the same scale. Now, to get your scale prompt down here, you either need to click in to model space and it'll come up down here. I usually will just select it. If I select it, it says viewport polyline. That's the non-plot layer I used as sort of a template to draw my rectangle over. But if I select viewport, I still get this prompt down here to scale the selected viewport. So if I click on this, there's a lot of standard options in here. Again, if you're in architectural inches, this should usually come up, particularly if you're in the US. It might look different if you're viewing from Europe or somewhere else. You may be using these ratios. Again, our ratios, for example, if we're in 8 scale, would be 1:96. So this is more of a metric setting. But they also have imperial settings down here. So 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. So if we click on that, it zooms in automatically. And I can pan around. Now, if I zoom again, I lose my scale. I can always go back and set it. Then just kind of pan over. You'll have to get into a good practice of making sure you're not zooming while you're panning and messing up your scale that you set. Now, I know because I've worked on this before, we're actually going to set a 1 inch equals 10 feet. So we're going to need to make a custom one. But for example, as we've been talking before, here's that 1/4 inch. So we're currently at 8 scale. So if I hit 1/4 inch, I'm going to zoom in twice as much, right? Obviously, we can't fit our whole drawing in there, but that's how these work. So as you get to a smaller fraction, you'll see more in your model view. So if I go to 8 scale, we'll zoom out at a factor of 2. Now, for example, if I go to 1/16 of an inch equals a foot, we'll zoom out twice as far. All of this is nice, but ultimately sometimes we need to have a scale that's not in the defaults. Now, I've already got one set up here. but let's actually go through how to set up a custom one. So if you have your model view window selected, click on here, scroll all the way down to the bottom, you see custom. So I'm going to click on custom. Edit drawing scales. So this is where we need to think about that ratio. I'm going to go ahead and delete our 1 inch equals 10 feet so we can go through all of that. But for example, if I go down to 1/8 of an inch equals a foot, this is the one we kind of keep coming back to. It's showing 1/8 of a paper inch. So it's thinking about the paper in inches, and then our units in model space. So 0.125 is 1/8 of an inch. You could also write this as 1 to 96 or 1/8 to 12. However you want to put these in are fine. You'll see that when we go into our custom version. But 1/8 of an inch equals 12 because our units in model space, that's what our drawing units are in inches. It's saying 1/8 of a paper unit, paper is in inches, equals 12 inches in our model space. So that's that ratio. So we want to make our custom one. So we'll go to add, name appearing in scale list. 1 inch equals 10 feet, just like that. Let's not forget our apostrophe. Now paper units, again, these are inches. So 1 inch equals 10 feet. 10 feet we know in inches is 120. So I hit OK. So that's been added to the list. If I hit OK, I still have my model view window selected. I go in here. Usually your custom ones come in up at the top. So I'm going to hit 1 inch equals 10 feet. We're going to zoom in slightly. And this is ultimately how we're going to set up our sheet. We got our property boundary here on the left or on the right. That's a good spacing. And then we can see slightly out into the street over here on the left-hand side. And then we just sort of set this in the middle so it looks nice. We'll adjust some of this text so we can either see it or we make sure we have it cropped out. Actually crop that out for now. And then click out of it. Now our drawing is set. If I select this again, I select our viewport, it's going to show 1 inch equals 10 feet. Once you get your position set and your scale set, what's important to do is then to lock that model view. Now I can still click into it, but I can't zoom, meaning I can't change the scale with my zoom. And if I pan, it pans as if I'm in paper space, even though I'm in model space. Now I can still select items in here. I could change the line type scale, anything like that.